Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here. If you're already subscribed and you haven't clicked that bell, be sure to do that, otherwise YouTube won't tell you that I posted anything. If you haven't subscribed, well, watch this video and maybe consider subscribing if you like it. I've been on testing and media for SPV3 for the last few years, so I generally know when a new build is coming out. But I've been so busy lately that I actually had nothing to do with this build in particular. I stream and edit videos full time. I'm going to be moving in a week. I'm staff on a convention that happens yearly in spring. I run the local Portland Rivals of Ether scene, which we're going to be having a large tournament in late August where people are flying in from across the country to attend, along with many other things. Needless to say, I've had my hands full, so I didn't even know there was going to be a new version of SPV3 coming out until 2 days before. And I didn't get a chance to stream it or play it at all until the full release was already out. My channel has somewhat blown up recently, so you might not have seen my previous SPV3 videos, which I would recommend clicking the top right to watch those videos. The first release of SPV3 came out in spring of 2016, and it featured all of Halo's levels up to Assault on the Control Room. The next release came out a little over a year later, in summer of 2017. This featured the rest of the levels that weren't in the first release. So you might think everything is done then, right? Well, apparently not. The SPV3 team wanted to add in a few more levels and refine the experience. Now, I'm not going to be going over this game in full detail. I would recommend you go watch those previous videos like I mentioned earlier, and they'll explain it to you in a lot better detail than here, but I will give you the too long didn't watch version. So what is SPV3? SPV3 is sort of a remastering of Halo Combat Evolved. It updates the graphics, brings the game more up to date, and adds a ton of content in the form of new weapons, new levels, and new enemies. Even though when you look at the level list you'll see stuff like Pillar of Autumn, there are sections in the Pillar of Autumn that are completely new that weren't in the base level. And then there are entirely new levels like the Sound Cartographer Evolved, which you may think might just be the Sound Cartographer, but no, it has the same premise and the same objectives, but the actual map layout is entirely different. This really is a new level, a sort of remastering if you will. Sort of like what the Black Mesa guys did with Zen. And when I say this mod gives you a lot of new content, I really mean it gives you a lot of new content. There are so many weapons in this mod that weren't in Halo Combat Evolved that you would recognize from the later games or are entirely new that you've never got a chance to play around with. Say the Halo 2 SMG or the Battle Rifle or the DMR, and maybe something entirely new like an incendiary version of the Plasma Pistol that also kind of works like a shotgun in a way. Even the weapons that already were in Halo Combat Evolved are entirely different. The pistol has been completely reworked because then it would kind of conflict with the DMR if it stayed the same. But it's still really fun to use and has its purpose. Same thing for the Assault Rifle, or really just everything. The weapon sandbox is totally different and has its own functions. And then you have plenty of new enemies to deal with. Say the Brutes have been added in, different forms of elites, and especially the big one is that there are many different types of Flood, which helps break up the monotony of the same two types of Flood running at you over and over again. I still think fighting the Flood sucks though, please don't kill me. And then there are all the quality of life changes. This game came out in 2001, so it's pretty outdated. No game ever thought to be in 1920 by 1080 at that time. And it was also a very dodgy PC port. But you don't have to do any workarounds to make it match your native resolution, you just install the game and then you can change it to 1080. It also runs on OpenSauce, which gives it plenty of graphical enhancements, but also lets you do very simple things like say change your FOV on the fly. Press F7 and you can change it to whatever way you want. This is more important than it usually is because the default FOV is really bad. The FOV for the port is even worse than the default version of Halo on Xbox. And if you have that option to change your FOV on the fly, you can adjust it to whatever you want, but I guarantee you're not going to want the default one, it's really narrow. I put it to around 100, which is what I prefer, but if you start raising it above that, the animations will start breaking. 100 is right about that tipping point where it might start breaking, but any more and it just won't really work. Again, this is the too long didn't watch version of what SPV3 does. I would really recommend you go watch my other two videos on the last releases. But this is what you should know to get an idea of what SPV3 is. You might be saying, well then it sounds like the mod is done, right? Why was there a new release? And is it just a small update? Well, calling it SPV3.2 is a little bit misleading because there's a lot added into this patch. It's not really a patch as much as it is a full-on content upgrade. Let's start graphically. They've added a few things that genuinely make this game look better than the previous releases. The most notable ones that you'll see immediately is that they've added new lighting and volumetric effects. These two play nicely with each other. Looking up and seeing the sun rays coming through the fog still looks really good even in a 2001 game. They've also added a lot of other smaller touches, like say for example depth of field to cutscenes to make the cutscenes look better. Don't have to worry about it in-game, it doesn't interfere with anything that's only a cutscene thing. That's just a few examples. They've really just kept adding layer upon layer of the graphical upgrades they've already put into this mod, and it does look genuinely good for a 2001 game. And while all of these are nice additions, most of you are probably here to see what new content they added into the game, or what that title is about. Well, they added 3 new missions to the Halo campaign. No Man Left Behind, The Commander, and The Commander Evolved. In No Man Left Behind, this is effectively explaining how Sergeant Johnson got off the Halo ring instead of him just suddenly popping up in Halo 2 and saying, hey, I'm alive, but that's classified, you'll never figure it out. This level is effectively playing the Halo level, the second level in the Halo game, in reverse while everything is on fire. This level is somewhat dark but also somewhat lit up by everything having this orange hue to it, and it just looks really good to me. The next two levels, the Commander and the Commander Evolved, are a lot more interesting to me. You play as the Arbiter, and this takes place during the events of the Maw. So as this level is happening, Chief is about ready to blow up the ship, and by the end of the level, he does, and you have to make a quick escape. This doesn't happen at the same place though, only at the same time. This actually happens on the island of the Silent Cartographer, while the Flood has taken over the island. As mentioned, you play as the Arbiter, but you do have two other members in your squad, one of which is Halfjaw, and the other one is the fourth player co-op character seen in Halo 3. Now I'm not going to try to tell you all the fine details because I really care about Halo for the gameplay, especially for the multiplayer. And I can tell you most of what happens in the campaigns of the Halo games, but if something happens in the books or say Halo Wars and you ask me about it, I'll probably have no clue. I could look up and research some of the lore behind it to see what's really going on in this level because it probably is tied to something, but instead of probably getting some information wrong, I'll let people that actually know what they're talking about tell you about it. Instead, I'll just focus on the levels themselves. You probably figured this out, but you're revisiting the Silent Cartographer and the Silent Cartographer Evolved. These missions have the same objective structure, but they play out very differently, much like the Silent Cartographer and the Silent Cartographer Evolved. There's a few major differences though. As an elite, you can't use human weapons. A little bit of a bummer, but there's probably reasons for that. One, elites are very different, so I imagine it would be difficult to make the model work with human weapons. And two, maybe the team didn't like elites possibly using human weapons, who really knows. Unfortunately, I can't say the concept carries this level enough, because this level seems to play out really similarly to those Halo 2 levels that I didn't really like, say Quarantine Zone and Gravemind. You know, the levels where you're playing as the Arbiter walking through Forerunner facilities and you're just killing Flood the whole time? I hated those, and this plays really similar to it, and this is more of a problem I have with the Flood rather than the level itself. And I should probably explain why I don't find the Flood very enjoyable. When you're fighting things like, say, squads of elites or squads of brutes, you're generally dumped into this big combat area. And you see the squads in front of you, you know how many you need to get rid of before you can move on to the next objective or the next area. This tends to lead to you playing more dynamically with these enemies. You have to outsmart them, get around them, use cover properly. Generally, to me, it plays out in a much more fun, enjoyable way. The Flood, however, are very different. They play out more like a typical zombie game. If you know me, you know I hate zombies. The Flood at least have interesting lore behind them, unlike zombies, but the gameplay is pretty similar. They do have enemies that will shoot you at range and occasionally instantly kill you with a rocket launcher out of nowhere, but for the most part, the Flood just kind of try to overwhelm you with numbers. I don't particularly find this interesting or fun, but the bigger problem is that you never know how many of them you need to kill before you can continue. They seemingly never continue to spawn, which, I don't know about you guys, for me the end result is, fuck this, I'm not gonna kill them, I'm just gonna run through them and get to where I need to go. And then the level feels like a chore and you're just playing it so you can beat the level and get to something that's actually fun. I found this to be even more of a problem in these levels because you can't use the human weapons, so you run out of ammo quickly, but also the Flood still uses human weapons so they're laying around, which means they're not using the Covenant weapons as much, so there's less ammo to go around. There's somewhat of a solution to this. You can use a sword in this mod. This works like the Spartan abilities where it's on a cooldown, and you can use it for a certain period of time. It's very useful to get the Flood out of your way. You don't get a lunge out of it, and I'm not complaining about this because trying to do anything involving momentum in Halo 1 just royally breaks the game, and there's no real way to fix that. But still, having a one-hit melee kill weapon is so useful, and you've never really been able to use a sword in Halo 1 before properly, so this kind of gets that fix out of the way. With all of that said, this is more of a band-aid for the actual problem than a real fix. But my bigger problem with these levels is that they're a little bit cryptic in where you need to go. You usually have to walk up to something and press E to trigger the next event, or blow something up. And the way you figure this out is generally one of your squad mates saying it once. But if you miss that cue, you have no idea what to do. This happened to me, and I completely walked around the island before giving up and moving on to the next level before returning to it, eventually figuring out what I was supposed to do. This is somewhat forgivable because these are new levels and they've had the least amount of time to point players in the correct direction. The Commander Evolved definitely has a bigger problem with this. There's still one part that I'm not sure what I was supposed to do. There's an elevator shaft, there's no button to bring the elevator up. If you try to jump down, you die. Eventually, at one point, I accidentally slipped down the elevator shaft, bounced off a few walls, and landed and didn't die, and then the level continued as normal, and I'm pretty sure that's not the way you're supposed to do it, but whatever, I beat the level.
I survived? How? I died every other time. Alright, whatever, I did it, I guess.
These levels are really cool in concept, but could use a little bit of tweaking. And for all I know, maybe you like different things than I do. Maybe you're one of those crazy people that has a terrible opinion and you like Quarantine Zone and Gravemind, then you'll probably like these levels. And really, even if I didn't care for these levels much, that's fine. This mod gives you so much content to sift through. Just to beat the regular Halo campaign, it's probably going to take you around 20 hours. I mean, this stream I had with just these 3 new levels and one other regular Halo level was 5 hours alone. And that's not even talking about the surprise edition of Project Lumoria given SPV3 support. If you don't know what Project Lumoria is, it's an older Halo mod that is well known. For the most part, it can kind of just be looked at as a Halo expansion. 3 levels and didn't really do anything outside of the box. It didn't add new weapons, it just had the regular Halo sandbox, didn't really add new graphics, but it was a well-made mod. Good level design, good enemy placement, and a few new enemies. Well, the release of SPV3 added in entirely new weapons and new enemies. It also gave a graphical update with open sauce. I honestly was having more fun with Project Lumoria than I was base SPV3. Probably because I had never played it before. But this can be looked at as its own expansion away from SPV3. Even the weapons are different. Some of them cross over to be the same, like say the carbine, but take the battle rifle for example and it's totally separate. The battle rifle has a slower fire rate but now fires in a 4-round burst, which is interesting. It also doesn't have the full scope, it has more of a Halo 5 smart scope looking thing. The pistol is a scoped suppressed pistol, which is pretty cool, and the assault rifle, while acting similar to SPV3, still feels very different, especially with its 60-round mag. There's a lot of small differences like this, and it really should be looked at as its own expansion. And this expansion you play as a different Spartan, Spartan 017. Otherwise known as May. I won't talk too much about the story because I figured it'd be better if you figured it out, but I think it's interesting that you're playing as a totally different Spartan other than Master Chief. Lumoria has its own stories with its own voice actors. The voice acting could use a little bit of work, but honestly it's not cringeworthy by any means like most mod voice acting is. Speaking of, I somehow forgot to mention the voice acting in the Commander. The Arbiter's voice actor is the regular voice acting from the later games. However, other characters that didn't have a previous voice actor had modders attempt to fill in that role, and a modder trying to fill in the role of a voice actor of say a brute or an elite is a pretty difficult thing, and honestly it just doesn't sound good.
Identify yourself.
Chieftain Lapidus of the Ninevalier clan.
What are you doing here?
The cartographers compromised by the parasite. They snuck in through the vents and broke our lines, taking many of my pack. We were barely able to make our escape and barricaded ourselves here.
We're here to secure the cartographer.
Now, I'm not giving a lot of shit for this. This is a really hard thing to replicate. But truth be told, it probably would have been better to not try to replicate this. Like, it just made me check out of the cutscenes, and it was kind of hard to listen to. And just to be clear, I gave this mod a lot of praise for a reason. It deserves it. But I do have some criticisms, and I wanted to get those out too. The last criticism I've had is sort of one I've always had when it comes to SPV3. It loves to dump a lot of bullet spongy enemies at you at once. This results in a really inconsistent difficulty. One moment may be a complete cakewalk, and then the next moment you're overrun with brutes and elites. At certain points it gave me vibes of Halo 2 Legendary, where if you pop your head up for 1 second, your shields are instantly drained and you have to go back behind cover. Putting 10 brutes and elites in the same place next to each other with the highest amount of shields possible doesn't really result in a fun experience for me. It results in a TD grindy experience of finally killing one enemy just to have to do it to 10 others. It's sort of a complaint I've always had about SPV3 difficulty. I don't mind a game being difficult, it's just the way it's difficult makes it a little annoying. So don't feel bad if you want to play this in normal difficulty mode. Normal difficulty mode is not the cakewalk that it is in other games, it feels a little bit more difficult than default. Heroic, on the other hand, can feel like a little bit of a slog at times. One other complaint I have is that this game flashes white every time you take damage. This isn't really necessary. It's supposed to show you that you're taking damage, but my shield's already drained and start beeping at me, so I already know. I don't need my screen going full seizure mode. That just makes it genuinely hard to see what I'm shooting at. This is where a bunch of people will probably tell me to get good in the comments, even though I've been playing Halo since Halo 1. Hell, you can be the best player in the world at a specific game and people will still tell you to get good, so whatever. Anyway, that about sums up how I feel about the new SPV3.2 update. It honestly really is fantastic, all criticisms aside. There's something here for everyone, and there's a lot of content. It's probably going to take you around 24 hours to beat everything here. You could beat like 3 AAA games by the time you finally beat this one mod alone. It's also free because it's a mod. All you gotta do is go download Halo Custom Edition, which is also free, find a key for it, and then install SPV3, which it has its own installer and does it all for you. I'll put a link down below in a pinned comment telling you where you can download this. Please don't tell me how to install it if you have any problems. I'm not really tech work, but it should do everything for you, it shouldn't be a problem. But that sums up this video. Thank all of you that came over and joined me while I was streaming it. It's a lot of fun to stream Halo related stuff, can't wait for MCC. Special thanks to all my Twitch subscribers. If you are a Twitch subscriber, you get to see my videos 1 day ahead of time, so if you want to support me, go follow me on Twitch and maybe subscribe. You also get to see my videos 1 day ahead of time if you are a patron. Click on the link in the bottom right if you want to go look at that. Thank all of you for watching, and I will see you next time.